Imagine descending into a crystal-clear underwater cave, surrounded by towering limestone formations. You trust your guide to lead the group safely back to the surface, but deep beneath the water, something starts to go horribly wrong. One by one, divers begin disappearing into the darkness. And the guide doesn't even realize people are missing until it's already too late. By then, 4 divers are trapped inside a flooded underwater maze, running out of oxygen with no clear way back. What happened inside Mexico's infamous Skulls Cenote became one of the deadliest and most preventable cave diving disasters in Yucatan's history. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down the chilling 1995 Calavera Cenote diving tragedy. To understand why this disaster spiraled out of control so quickly, we first need to understand Yucatan. Stretching across southeastern Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula is revered and feared within the cave diving community. It hosts the 2 longest underwater cave systems on the entire planet, forming a massive underwater maze stretching hundreds of kilometers beneath the peninsula. The peninsula's landscape is dotted with roughly 6,000 natural sinkholes, locally known as cenotes. Formed thousands of years ago when porous bedrock collapsed, these closed water basins rarely connect to surface rivers. Fed solely by groundwater, their still, transparent waters have turned countless cenotes into mainstream tourist hotspots over the decades. Our story centers on Calavera Cenote, located just outside Tulum, part of the sprawling Sac-Acton cave system, an endless maze capable of swallowing careless divers whole. This sinkhole carries a menacing double identity. In Mayan, cenote directly translates to water well, a vital life resource for ancient civilizations. The name Calavera, however, derives from Spanish, meaning skull. The moniker is no coincidence. Calavera features 3 separate surface openings, one large main entrance paired with 2 smaller auxiliary holes. From an aerial perspective, the 3 openings align perfectly to form the hollow eye sockets and jawline of a human skull. Locals have dubbed it 2 additional grim nicknames: the Skull Pit and the Temple of Doom. For modern tourists, Calavera offers beginner-friendly aquatic activities, cliff jumping, snorkeling, and entry-level open water diving. The official diving route is a 366-meter circular loop, ranging from 6 to 15 meters in depth. Permanent guide ropes line the entire trail. The further they swam, the darker the cave became, the water grew colder, and eventually sunlight disappeared completely. But here's the lethal catch every casual diver overlooks. That beginner-friendly loop is merely a tiny surface window attached to the colossal Sac-Acton cave network. Veer even a single meter off the marked route, and everything changes. Beyond the tourist trail lies an uncharted underwater wilderness. Some sections plunge more than 100 meters deep. Countless unmarked forks and dead ends permeate the system. One wrong turn is enough to get permanently lost underwater. Park officials posted bright warning signs at every single junction, explicitly prohibiting unauthorized deep cave exploration. Despite repeated safety alerts, reckless divers continue crossing the warning line, driven by overconfidence and naive curiosity. In August 1995, that deadly arrogance would cost 4 people their lives. To protect the privacy of involved parties and their families, local media assigned pseudonyms to every member of the 8-person dive team. The group's organizers were Harry and Mary, a Mexican couple who owned a small diving shop in Cozumel. As summer tourist bookings surged in 1995, the pair received dozens of reservations for Tulum-based cenote diving excursions. This presented a critical problem. Both Harry and Mary only held open water diving certifications, 0 formal training, 0 credentials, and 0 practical experience for enclosed cave environments. Fearing massive financial losses from canceling pre-booked trips, the couple made a desperate and foolish decision: hire an uncertified local cave guide to lead the expedition. The guide they settled on was a local man named Juan. Juan knew Calavera's inner channels better than most regional divers, yet he possessed 0 official cave diving certifications. The couple's sole reason for hiring him? His service fee was drastically cheaper than licensed professional guides. On August 17, 1995, Harry and Mary joined 5 international tourists, 3 Dutch nationals, 1 Italian, and 1 American to meet Juan at Tulum. The group spent over an hour diving in a neighboring low-risk cenote to acclimate themselves, before heading to Calavera later that same morning. Most visitors used the built-in metal ladder at Calavera's main entrance to enter the water, but seasoned local divers preferred jumping straight into the sinkhole. Juan took the lead and jumped first. The 7 team members followed suit without hesitation. The original plan was simple and safe: stick exclusively to the marked circular loop and return to shore within 1 hour. Minutes into the dive, Juan abandoned the agreed-upon plan. Driven by overconfidence, he bypassed the warning ropes and led the team past the danger boundary into the unregulated deep cave section. At first, the cave felt almost unreal. White limestone pillars stretched through perfectly clear water. The visibility was so good, it barely felt underwater at all. And that illusion of safety is exactly what makes caves like Calavera so deadly. As the group delved deeper, natural sunlight faded rapidly, and the water temperature plummeted. Lacking cave diving training, Harry instantly sensed impending danger. Overwhelmed by anxiety, he decided to abort the deep dive. He attempted to alert his wife Mary, but she had already drifted far ahead with the rest of the group. With no way to catch up, Harry turned back alone and waited for the team at the entrance. At this point, 6 divers remained behind Juan. The guide continued pushing forward at a steady pace, never once glancing back to perform a head count, a basic non-negotiable rule for any group dive. What happened next would disorient even the calmest, most experienced divers. The team drifted straight into a pronounced halocline. Located close to the coastline, Calavera's water is a layered mix of fresh groundwater on the top and dense salt water on the bottom. The team had entered a halocline, a distorted layer where fresh water and salt water mixed together. Visibility suddenly became warped, like looking through moving glass. The water suddenly turned cloudy. Visibility warped in every direction. It looked like the cave itself was moving. One by one, the divers slowed down, trying to figure out which way was forward. Some could barely see the person swimming beside them, but Juan never stopped. He kept swimming deeper into the darkness, assuming the group was still behind him. And inside an underwater cave, losing sight of your team for even a few seconds can be fatal. Roughly 15 minutes later, Juan finally called a halt to the dive. His oxygen gauge revealed a critical shortage. He barely had enough gas left for the return trip. It was only when he spun around to signal the team to turn back that the gravity of his mistake crashed over him. Behind him stood merely 3 divers, 2 Dutch tourists and 1 Italian tourist. 4 people had vanished into the murky cave without a single trace. Shocked and alarmed, Juan immediately directed the surviving trio to follow him back to the entrance. The return trip passed without additional incident, and the 4 surfaced to find Harry still waiting anxiously by the exit ladder. When Juan asked if any missing divers had resurfaced, Harry shook his head. No one else had come back. Knowing the missing divers had mere minutes of breathable oxygen left, Juan wasted 0 time. He swapped out his empty tank for a full spare cylinder and dove back into the abyss alone to conduct a rescue. The other survivors climbed out of the sinkhole and contacted local emergency services for backup. Juan first retraced their original deep diving route all the way to the team's farthest stopping point. Yet he found 0 clues of the missing 4. He then took a calculated risk and explored a lower, unmarked branch of the cave. Within 6 minutes, he located 2 bodies, a Dutch man and an American tourist. Both tanks were completely empty, with detached regulators floating lifelessly beside their corpses. Refusing to pause and process the grim discovery, Juan pushed deeper to locate the final missing person, Harry's wife, Mary. Moments later, he spotted a flickering dive light in the distant darkness. Upon reaching the light, he found Mary unconscious and seizing violently underwater. Her breathing regulator had slipped out of her mouth, clear evidence that her oxygen supply had just been exhausted. Juan rapidly inserted his spare regulator into Mary's mouth, but it was already too late. She showed no signs of spontaneous breathing. With no other options, Juan grabbed Mary's body and raced toward the surface. Once they surfaced, Harry helped drag his wife onto solid ground and administered urgent CPR until ambulances arrived on site. Despite the emergency resuscitation efforts, Mary was pronounced dead shortly after being transported to the nearest hospital. The bodies of the remaining 2 missing divers were retrieved from the deep cave later that same evening. Every key witness, including Juan and Harry, was detained by local police for intensive questioning. The tragedy ignited fierce public outrage across Yucatan. Local residents argued that Juan's reckless and unprofessional decisions had tarnished Tulum's global diving reputation and crippled the regional tourism industry. Locals unanimously demanded prosecutors charge him with negligent homicide. Shockingly, police released Juan without any formal charges just days after the accident. After a comprehensive scene reconstruction and witness interrogation, authorities released their official timeline of the disaster. Investigators concluded that after completing the official circular loop, Juan led the team across the warning line into deep cave territory. Harry retreated within meters due to fear. Shortly afterward, Mary noticed her husband's absence and turned back alone to search for him. 2 additional divers followed Mary, hoping to navigate back to the entrance together. Unfamiliar with the chaotic cave layout and lacking marked guide ropes, the three quickly got disoriented at a complex fork. They spent their final precious minutes wandering between dead-end tunnels until their oxygen supplies ran dry one by one. On the surface, this tragedy seemed like a cruel stroke of bad luck, but the official investigation exposed 5 irreversible human-made errors that directly caused 4 unnecessary deaths, mistakes every cave diver must learn from. First and foremost, the expedition relied entirely on an uncertified guide. Juan possessed practical cave knowledge, yet held 0 valid cave diving qualifications and never received standardized emergency rescue training for enclosed underwater environments. Second, Juan blatantly violated the fundamental thirds rule, the golden ironclad rule of diving. The thirds rule dictates divers must turn back when consuming 1/3 of their total oxygen, reserving the remaining 2/3 for return travel and emergency contingencies. Juan only had 1/3 oxygen left when he finally decided to retreat. Third, the entire team used unsuitable open water diving gear. Standard open water equipment is not engineered to withstand low temperatures, disorienting haloclines, and narrow confined tunnels inside deep cave systems. The mismatched gear severely limited the divers' reaction speed and survival chances during emergencies. Fourth, the entire group suffered from a complete lack of basic team diving discipline. Juan neglected his core duty to monitor team members. Meanwhile, divers like Harry left the group abruptly without issuing any prior warning or notifying the guide, disrupting the team's overall rhythm and triggering subsequent chain reactions. The fifth and most catastrophic error was poor team sizing. Industry safety protocols stipulate a single cave guide should lead a maximum of 3 divers, forming a 4-person team at most, to ensure effective supervision. Irresponsibly, Juan took charge of 7 divers all by himself, with no assistant guide positioned at the rear to secure stragglers. In the wake of this public disaster, Yucatan's local government enacted sweeping, rigid new regulations for all cenote and cave diving activities. New rules standardized guide certification thresholds, enforced strict team size limits, classified restricted deep cave zones, and mandated dedicated safety briefings for every single participant before diving. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into this overlooked diving tragedy, drop a like and subscribe for more terrifying real-life disaster cases hidden beneath the world's most beautiful yet deadly locations. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.